Welcome to Free Friday webinars sponsored by American TESOL. And I'm Shelly Terrell. Today I'm coming to you from Houston, Texas to present some great ideas about using flashcards in a fun way with your students, adult students, and young learners as well. But before we begin, just to let you know that you can always go to bit.ly /ELT links. It is case sensitive. And when you go there, then you can find many of the resources of all the webinars, just in case you miss them. So the first thing I want to do is I want to suggest that it's a great idea for students to use flashcards. And one of the things about the students is that flashcards are good for every level. But the problem becomes when the students don't use them in a way that really helps them. So there's two things to consider. Well, the first thing to consider is it depends on what level you're working with. And so the flashcards for young learners are going to be quite different than the flashcards for adults. So, for example, for young learners, you want to make sure that you have pictures, and maybe you'll just have the word. And they usually have to be really colorful pictures or like cartoon characters, so that way it looks like a lot of fun for the kids. Teens and adults are going to have flashcards that look a bit different, and it's up to you what you want to include. But a lot of times for teens and adults, it'll have not only the word, but it's going to have a definition of the word. And I think it's really important that the students have a definition that they understand. So we want to make sure that they can be able to put in their own words the definitions from whatever website or dictionary they get it from. I think it's really important. The other thing is it's definitely important to put parts of speech, especially for language learners. So that way the student knows whether they can use the word as a noun and also as a verb, and sometimes as an adjective. And it's important that they realize that there can be more than one definition for a word. It's really important that they have a real world and personal example, how they will use the word eventually in conversation, in what kind of a context, because this really helps them to understand the meaning of the words. Like it helps them to picture the content. And then phonetic spelling, so that way they'll be able to pronounce the word. The other thing is to encourage them to work with other students. Many of our students sometimes will take the flashcards, and what they'll do is they'll make the mistake of trying to memorize things by themselves. Well, we know what the problem is with that. If they do it by themselves, then it's much difficult for them to store it in their cognitive for long-term memory. But if they study with another student, it's fun. And not only is it fun, but they're able to also remember the words better. They say that the kids that teach other students actually do the best and remember things in class better because they're teaching other students. So it shows that they understand what the meaning is. And Bob shared with us in the chat box a flashcard making site. So thank you for that. So now let's get on to the good part, the games. There are several games that you can play with your students, and they're for different types of levels as well. One of my favorites is Pictionary. And if you're not familiar with Pictionary, let me go ahead and tell you what Pictionary is. Pictionary is when you have the students take a deck of cards, and what they do is they pull the top card out, and on the top card out, what they do is they're in teams. So you break them up in different teams, and then they have to draw what is on the flashcard, the vocabulary word, and then the other students have to figure out what their drawing is. So you can tell, if they understand the meaning of the word or anything like that. So here we go. The other thing is that you can have charades, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with charades, where they draw the card and then they act it out. Sometimes with adults, though, they rather draw the picture, so that can be a little bit easier for them to get used to and play. Some adults are very shy with that, but the charades is great for the kids. And the other things, it's taboo. so they can make their own taboo game, if you're familiar with the taboo game. And that's where they can work in pairs, and then they have to guess what the vocabulary word is by describing other words that are not related to that. So I'm going to show you what some of these games look like. Well, this is bingo, and I got this from bogglesworldesl.com. And Boggles World is fantastic because it has so many different types of makers for you for free. So you have the bogglesworldesl.com, and you can make a bingo card with your flashcards. And what you do is you take a deck of cards and you take the flashcard and you'll show it to the student, or you can describe a definition. It depends what level of English your students have. If they're at a higher level, then I would say describe the definition, don't show them the picture. And then they have to go, and then they have to put the bean or the penny where the right vocabulary word is. And then you can assess whether or not they knew what this was or not, the vocabulary word, by doing that. And then you can make your corrections right then and there. The other thing you can do at Boggles World is that you can make any, especially if you use the flashcards they already have generated, you can use different types of templates there. The other thing is the chain story. This is really good for adults. They really like this. And what it is it's a take on the actual chain story where the first person has to say once upon a time, and then they make a sentence. Yes, Ola. It's great to see you, Ola. And so the next person after that has to continue the story. But in the version with flashcards, so you have a deck of flashcards, and each of them takes the first word, and that's what they have to use in the story. They have to use a vocabulary word in the story. And you can have a buzzer, and if you have a buzzer and you buzz it, that means that they didn't use the word correctly. So they have to try it again. And that makes it fun when you have a buzzer. Sometimes the adults laugh and stuff like that. So, but it gets them thinking on their toes because they have to be able to use the word in a specific context in a very specific way. And this way you can make sure that they use it correctly, because we want to make sure our students use words correctly. So you can use your flashcards in this kind of manner. Ola asked, so you give them words and you leave it for free. With the flashcards, since it's a flashcard game, I give them the word. It's a fun way to review like vocabulary words for the week. But there are times when I do leave it for free. But if I'm studying vocabulary words in a vocabulary word set and I want them to review it, then each of them will draw one word from that list, and then they can all have a good time listening to the story that comes about it. The next one is called the Card Collector. Now this one's a bit better for young learners, and the young learners love this game. So you get to have a whistle. That's always great if you have a whistle with young learners anyway, because it's really fun to incorporate the game. But the kids line up at one end of the room. And what you tell them is that, and then what you do is on the other end of the room, you scatter all the flashcards on the bottom. And remember, with kids, you have the picture, and usually have like one word what it is. But what you're going to do is you're going to name a category, and when you name the category, you blow the whistle, and then they run and they have to find the vocabulary words that match that category. For example, you can say things I would find outside. So, and then they have to justify the ones that they have. The one with the most type of cards wins. So the kids love this a lot. And then you can give a prize if you want, or you can say you have to find at least 5 cards, and you want to make sure you get a big diverse mix. I try to do something pretty, like if we're studying animals, then it's really good to say animals that live in the north, or animals that live in cold environments, animals that eat other animals. So that way I can see if they understand what this type of animal is. But they do love the racing and things like that. Now this game is for kids and adults. This is called Who Am I? Now I don't have an example of a card, but this one is really good right here as well. So they just take the flashcard, what they learned, and they put it on their forehead, and then they walk around, and they have to ask questions, and then the other students respond to it so they can guess what they are. So, and it could be an object. It could be anything with computers. It could be even an adjective. You can make specific types of questions. You can tell them to ask who, what, when, where questions. It's up to you. You can be pretty flexible with this. Um, and the way that I found out about this is actually I played it at a leadership seminar with other adults. And what we did is we just did a normal deck of cards. But what we did is we went ahead and we said, okay, um, we had like jokers and we had queens, and then the people treated you instead the way your card was, and then you had to guess from there. But I do like the language perspective as well. Now, Tara Benwell in the chat box says, if you don't want to use a whistle, that you could try a microphone instead, and that her son's teacher has a microphone in the class for the kids to make important announcements. The other one we have is fortune teller, and I have the same thing here. I don't know what I did here. Okay, so this is for older kids and adults. But student A places 5 fortune cards in front of student B, so they work in pairs. And then student B has to make up the future using those fortune cards. So the kids have a lot of fun, and even teenagers have a lot of fun with this. You can do a couple of things. If you wanted to make it into a true game, and the thing about true game is to define that, somebody wins something. So what you can do is you can add play money, because when you visit a fortune teller, you pay them. Now, if student A feels that student B used the vocabulary word correctly in the fortune, then they get $1 for every one that is correct. But if student B does not use the vocabulary word correctly, then they don't get any. They don't get paid for that fortune. So that's one way to make it to where you can see. And then at the end, whoever has the most play money wins. And they switch roles, and then the other one gets to do it as well. Noah's Ark. Now this one I got from EnglishRaven.com, and English Raven has several different types of games. This is by Jason Renshaw. And so what Jason did was he has a bunch of animal flashcards that we used with the students. And you can see me using it with a little bit of an older crowd, but you can use it with the little kids as well. And so what you do is you draw a large arc, and any of your best drawer in the classroom can draw this arc. And you make it into different, you divide the boat in the bottom into sections of 3, and then you have the one on top. And the kids, they have to take the animals, and they have to, in small groups or in pairs, decide which animals will go in which category. Now, the kid has to know what the animal is and what it eats and things like that, because the alligators, for example, wouldn't be able to go with maybe the giraffes, because alligators are going to eat the giraffes. So, and then they must go and they must support their decisions. Now, what you can do is you can make it to where all the groups have to present what their plan is, because you will pretend to be Noah, and you will say, kids, you have to help me. I have to decide how I'm going to make all the animals survive, and you have to help me decide the best design and plan for the Noah's Ark. And so then the one that has the most supported decisions, when they say, oh, well, we put the crocodiles with the birds, and then because we figure the birds are always going to stay up high, then you'll be able to figure out, you can say, okay, well, this team wins. This is the team that came up with the best one. So that's a way to make sure that they use a lot of communication with the words as well. There are also a lot of online tools and research as well. And Tara suggests they can practice their English animal sounds too. I love listening to what other animals say in other languages. Yes, that would work really well for young learners as well. So online tools and resources. Well, there are different tools and resources where you can get different types of flashcards. You don't necessarily have to design your own flashcards. And I've found that a lot of the websites that have free ones have really good ones, and they have good images to go with it. And I think it's really important, especially for young learners, to have those that have images as well. And even with adults, if you have adults and they have an elementary level of English, it's good for them to have a visual a vision, an image with to go with it, so they understand what it is. So you can go to bogglesworldesl.com cards, and they have tons, and I really like the format of those. And that's the one I use for my young learners a lot. And the great thing about bogglesworldesl.com is if you go to the card side, then it gives you tons more games that you can do with flashcards. For example, they have um, Go Fish, they have a handkerchief race, they have matching shoes. This one I really love. Okay, so what they say in matching shoes is you place a card in every student's shoe, and then they have to try and match the card that is in their own shoe by looking at the other student's shoes. So I thought that was kind of fun as well. They have phonetic practice, different things like that. And one of the great things is you can have students with, so so when you think about a board game, there's a deck of cards and then you have dice. So you can just give each student a deck of cards, dice, and then their own board template, then have them work in small groups. Give them a few of the cards because usually we have vocabulary in themed units. So you can give them the flashcards of the theme unit, and then each group has to come up with a game. And then what they do is they have the other group play their game. And this is the way I started doing some of the testing as well. Instead of having my students just fill out and memorize, and then they have to fill out the word and the sentence and stuff, I had them do it this way, and then they actually got a grade for it. Because I thought this was a much better way, and it was more fun for them to do. So you can go to bogglesworldesl.com and get a free template for the kids, and then they come up with their own type of game and rules and things like that. And Bob shared one as well inside the chat box, which is flashcard mesenglish.com flashcards.php. I'll share the Boggles World in a little bit. You can also go to esllibrary.com. They have really great flashcards for they have a whole entire library of over 2,000 flashcards. And the great thing is that every Friday you get a flashcard idea. So it's really great. And then you also get it according to what the theme is. So you can see here they have one flashcards for Thanksgiving, and then you're going to get activities that go with that. And then you'll find my post, Flashcard Fun, 10 plus ideas. So you'll find a lot of resources in here as well. EnglishRaven.com. That's the one that I used earlier for the Noah's Ark game. And you can also find many, many other different types of card games when you go there. So these are different ones that he has. He has a time machine card, color matching cards, conversation creators, mixed feelings bingo, so all sorts of things. And the EnglishRaven.com site is really good for kids, is what I found. So there are other tools, you may have heard me mention this before, that are free online, where the students actually can play games with the flashcards that they make. You can embed this in a website or wiki. My favorite is Quizlet. I love Quizlet. And the great thing about Quizlet is they have so many themselves library of flashcards. So for example, when I wanted to do 2 and 3 part phrasal verbs, I didn't have to come up with my own list. I basically took the list of somebody else and then I could customize it. So it was really great because they already had the definition, and it saved me so much time. I didn't have to worry about this. And then what I did was I embedded it in my wiki for my adults. A wiki is a free website where you can just put things and do a lot of collaboration and stuff. And so what happened was it showed the words, and then after they studied the words, the phrasal verbs, then they had a chance to play a couple of games to see if they really understood the words or not, if they understood what the different phrasal verbs were. And so the first one was scatter, and what it does is it scatters all of the definitions, and then you have with the phrasal verbs as well, and then you have to connect them together. And it's timed, so you can see that it's timed right here. And then you have a record, so you can keep playing it until you do a good job. You can even use the wiki if you want to go back, and you can list scores so that way they can compete against each other. That works really well with teenagers. They love to be in competition with each other and win little badges for it. So you can easily do that if you have a wiki. The other thing you might want to see, there's many other games with Quizlet as well, but the great thing is that if your students, especially your adult students, have a smartphone, they can download it for free. And so they have all the flashcards on the go. And then they don't have to worry about having these printed out and taking them. If your students, especially your adult students and business people, will have their phone with them all the time. So when they're riding in the public transportation, you can encourage them. That's a great way to study your phrasal verbs, or that's a great way. And they can play games. So since they can play games with it, it's a bit more challenging and they remember a lot. And it's a great way for them to spend the time that they would be normally waiting on the metro, not doing anything. So Word Stash is another one. It's not on their mobile, but it is online. And the great thing about Word Stash is it's the same thing where you can find a bunch of flashcards as well. But it will give you specific examples in the media. So for example, when you click this little icon right here, then you can go ahead and you can see how they used it in like the New Yorker, the New York Times, the newspapers and magazines. So that works really well with adults and business students. You click next and you get another example. And so what you can do is you can have your students come to this, and this could be a homework task or not home task. You can say, okay, so what I want you to do is to is to choose one of the examples that you think applies to you, and then how you would use it on your own as well. Or they can guess what the rest of the article meant, or as long as they make it very personalized. It also has where it pronounces it for them, so that's really fantastic. It gives them synonyms. And then the students, of course, can go in and they can make their own flashcards as well. They can do that with Quizlet as well, too. And that's wordstash.com. So those were the websites that I wanted to show you. And then I'm going to actually show you how I did this in my wiki as well. But I'm going to go and have to take my video off so that way you can see it and it won't freeze. But if you want a certificate or anything, just go to shellyterrell@gmail.com and the bit.ly ELT links. Oh, is the sound gone? I'm so sorry. What? Can you hear me again now? Okay, so hopefully you can hear me now. Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, so here we go. So this is my wiki that I used with my adults. And this is how I use Quizlet with that wiki. So you can see where they have the 2 and 3 part, and this is what it looks like on the website, see? And then they can study it like that, the different types of phrasal verbs. Get back at, get revenge against. And then so you can do study these flashcards, and they can do it here, and they go to the Quizlet website, or they can simply, I have it right here. I say, read the definition, click on the flashcards to study. See if you can remember the definitions by seeing the words. Test yourself. And then they have the scatter game, and then they have space erase. So, or they can do it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do the scatter. And so they can actually play it within the wiki themselves. They don't even have to go to the word. So they start the game. Call on, let's see, call on is going to be, and well, this is the way they pick on. I mean, they do the different games. You can see how it's doing the recording, and then it's going to give them a time as well. The other one that they also have is space erase. Let me see if I have the space erase. But they can just start playing. And then what they have to do is they have to type in the phrasal verb that it is. They have to type it in right here. And then when they finish, then they can go ahead and they can have different ones. So you can see right there. I also like to give them like a little video so they can understand it as well. I give them like a little slide. And then for those of them who are not so tech savvy, I actually give them the definition so they can, if they want to make their own flashcards as well, then that's not a problem for me. So let me go back over here. Okay, so I will put the what I recently shared. And does anybody have any type of activities that they have with their students? All the slides can be found here. You can actually download this presentation. Um, and then you can find all the links here as well. Now I can read it out loud if you want, or you can use the microphone and you can tell us about what you do with your student. Now everybody has a microphone, so all you have to do is go to the top and you just click on the microphone, and then you have the microphone to talk. Now Javiera says that she does a role play with the students in the flashcards. Can you explain a little bit more about that? This is how you, so I'm providing the links at the bottom, and then you just email me at shellyterrell@gmail.com, and then you can get your certificate of attendance for this conference. Okay, well, I hope you guys have a great weekend and that you had some fun ideas for a new way to use flashcards in a very fun way. Instead of just the traditional way, your students will love that you use it in a more interesting way. And encourage them. I think it's really important that at home you want to encourage them to use flashcards in a fun way and not just the traditional way, because they're not going to learn as quickly and they're not going to be able to understand a definition if they do it that way. Bob suggests, as some final thoughts, with small groups, to use flashcards with definitions on one side and vocabulary on the other. Make a square and have students have to tell you what is on the other side of the card. I turn it over and keep on going until all of them answer, and then I slip in new ones. Okay, yeah, that's a good one as well. Okay, and Tara Benwell says to check out bighugelabs.com for different types of images and motivational posters.